groovy, huh?
Yeah. I love the dynamics through this.
Yeah, pretty amazing. This is kind of like the piece where there's almost no dynamic marking in it.
All right. So that was really great. We have a bunch of the usual suspects here with us on the stream. We've got Henry, Matt, Mike, Jacobu Music. I know that name, but thank you
Jacob.
guys. Oh, is that Liebeck?
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Hey, Jacob. Cool. So we've got a bunch of people on the stream, which is great. Thank you for joining us. The people on the stream mostly likely already know our guest today, but Markus Reuter is a composer in Germany, based in Berlin, and a good friend, really touched musician. And I'm really proud to feature Markus on the site anytime we get the opportunity. So Markus, thanks so much for joining. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about what we just heard and what we're going to hear today?
Well, a few years ago, I got in touch with, or actually the other way around, some guys got in touch with me in Berlin, the Fischer brothers, Dirk and Tobias Fischer, and they were about to start a new label, Soler Records, and they asked me if I wanted to write music for their label, basically. And the original idea was to make like a almost like a compilation of stuff that I had already written and some new stuff, and for all sorts of different lineups, and also like a solo clarinet piece, stuff like that. And that was quite challenging. And at that point, I mean, I started making some plans, but then I didn't really follow through. And a couple of years later, we met again, and then the idea came up to write a string quartet. And even though I liked the idea, I wasn't keen on running such a project, because that always also includes, in my case, some crowdfunding, because I cannot afford stuff like this myself. And so then, luckily, my friend Cedric Tess, he helped raising the funds, and that's how this project came about. And last summer, I took 6 weeks of other work, and I wrote this piece of music, which is like, I think, about 53 minutes or something, 8 pieces for string quartet.
Well, I love it. I know in some other videos that you've made, you say you don't like the word new. Can you talk a little bit about why, and what made you say that with respect to these pieces?
Well, it's kind of a double-edged sword for me, like in a way, new is what I'm always after somehow, but just calling it that way just doesn't make any sense. That's how I feel about it. Like, because like, just for me, I want to find music that's exciting for myself, really, and that's kind of the only reference point I have is myself, and some friends now who say they enjoy the music, but I mean, do I know what they're experiencing of the music is? No, I don't, and I will never know that. And so, the word new is kind of entirely subjective, I guess.
Yeah, so I've avoided using the word new just as a mental experiment because of what you said, and especially in the context of promoting this stream and this event. So I'm like, how do I talk about what this is without using that word to honor, what you're saying, but also to give myself a different experience. And it's helped me to listen to the music in a different way. Like, I know it sounds maybe to some people a little crazy or ridiculous, but because I've never heard it, and the word new is so ingrained in our culture and the way that we do things, I've thought, how do I listen to this without the word new? And it really did shape my experience. So as we listen together, I'd like to encourage other people to listen to this and don't use the word new. Don't think of new. This isn't new. This is Markus. This is who he is. This is a piece of him. That's the way that I've been viewing it. So why don't you tell us a little about the piece that we're going to hear? I think we're going to start with Boone. Sound good?
Yeah, sure. Well, what shall I say about that? It's actually the piece that happened that I wrote on this very table that I'm sitting on right now. And it took maybe, and it will be very interesting for people to know, writing that piece maybe took 20 minutes. This is kind of, it's on one hand, it's absolutely true, but then I'm not counting all the preparation going into it.
Okay.
Just in a way, I'm working in such a way that where I'm looking for the material I want to work with, and once I've identified the material, then I need to find in the second stage is to find a translation of that material into a piece of music. And really, this translation, I found that in like 20 minutes. And then after that, once it was translated, it had to get engraved and like written down and stuff, and that took more time, obviously.
All right, so
thing is short. Yeah.
20 minutes with Markus Reuter. What a beautiful piece of music and so fun.
Yeah,
Um, okay, so I have a few things that come to mind. Have you ever seen There Will Be Blood?
I don't think I have, but it's yeah,
The
tell me.
soundtrack is by Johnny Greenwood of Radiohead,
Yeah,
and he uses a lot of these like sliding notes that come in, and there's tension, tension, and then they come together in a sunrise shot. It's like the first 15 minutes of that film, I think, are some of the greatest minutes captured on film.
hmm
And the music, it wouldn't, I mean, the movie itself is amazing, but the music makes that whole first section because there's no dialogue. And
yeah,
it's just the music driving this kind of drilling that it's this guy, he's old western kind of miner, he's digging for oil, trying to find oil and gold in a small like mine that he's dug out of the ground. And there's a lot of tension because he's looking for something and he's risking everything, being alone out in the desert with no little water and food. But anyway, like this is kind of like this piece, I feel like I hear elements of that, which I hear because I know that film. I hear Aaron Copland, I hear Stravinsky. With some of the people on the stream are saying, let's see, they are, how does looping inform your compositions? Love the dynamics in this one. Wow, you have to do a film score. Nice balance of tonal and dynamic phrasing. Juxtaposition of staccato and glissando. How fast you're traveling versus your perception of the speed. And then, Sebastian Ruger, I'm guessing, he said, yes, there will be blood. He thought the same thing. So
okay.
feel free to respond to any and all of that.
Yeah, I mean, the interesting thing is that for me, I mean, I'm even sure that I've seen that film, but there you already get a sense of how my brain works. I don't really store stories and images.
Right.
It's just my brain is totally on a different medium.
Mm-hmm.
Even though one could say that that medium is music or sound, I don't think that's it even. Like for me, it's emotions really,
Mm-hmm.
or having an emotion that kind of wants to get out, and then the only way how I can get it out is through music and through processes that create music,
Yeah.
where I'm the tool basically, right?
Right.
And with all the pieces on Heartland, there's no there's never been any image in my head. And the pieces, I wanted the pieces to just appear, and like one of the only really rule I set myself was that I wanted to edit less, so just to leave things how they are and
Right.
not be question things too much. And rather than taking things away in terms of like shortening pieces or whatever, I wanted to just like maybe add something, like add a note somewhere to make it. But that happened very rarely. But just for example, till the very end, maybe a couple of weeks before we started recording, I didn't have any dynamics markings in the music.
Really?
Yeah, yeah, because like the way that I feel about it, as that's the thing. I'm a performer
Mhm.
as well. And when I perform music, I can rely very much on my musicality, and I can play one note, and that I can play a beautiful note, and I don't have to consider the compositional context even when I'm making a sound. But when writing for other people, I try to I try to write the dynamics into the music itself in such a way that they don't have to be told how to play things. They can have the freedom to do that any way they want. But I inquired with some friends who have experience with string players, and they said I need to write something into
Yeah.
the score.
Right. Right.
And I did that, and it worked very well. I think the players, the Matangi Quartet, which were really really wonderful. Um, I had the feeling that they were still free in interpreting, even though there was stuff written in the scores.
Right.
So.
There are a couple more things I want to note about this. First, the recording quality, the mix, everything is just superb. And the URL to purchase this album is on the stream, like below our faces. So anyone who is watching or listening, please check out the URL and go to purchase this and support this kind of music. But furthermore, like, I was pretty astounded, and I'm listening in nice headphones, but the recording quality is fantastic. Can you tell us a little about the approaches that were taken to capturing this piece?
Yeah, so I have to say, even though I'm not a specialist in this at all, but I was lucky to work with Dirk, who is just a genius, as you can hear. He's a genius. I had never worked with him before. I heard some of his recordings and they sounded great. But in this context of like my music, where I'm actually paying a lot of attention, it's he's just a genius. And I mean, the interesting thing is he doesn't even seem to, yes, he does mix also, but really he captures the sound the way he wants it.
Yeah.
He does not, I mean, we had some spot mics in the room, like microphones pointing to those four instruments as well, and those got mixed in a little bit. And in some places we lowered those microphones, and some places we brought them up. But that was about what was being balanced. He had the balance right in the room, and it was just amazing. And I can't tell you about the recording setup because I just let him do that, and he did a wonderful job.
He did.
And we actually did a 5.1 version, which is not yet available for pre-order.
Oh.
We did that in a big studio in Berlin, and it took us, again, like maybe not even an hour, because he had stuff recorded in surround. So all he needed to do was to put the microphones that were in the rear speakers, and it's amazing. It's like my first real surround recording.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
All right, so let's get to some of the people on the stream. I love what Henry had to say. He said, you're trusting the process and trusting the flow regarding the lack of the written dynamics, and the way that you're writing. So great comment, Henry.
But I also think that certain phrases or certain rhythmic phrases and certain interval jumps, let's say, they suggest a dynamic. And I have like a deep sense of how these things translate. And really, so even though it's not, I'm not totally leaving it up to chance, it's somehow kind of written in the part.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so I have a question that's related to Bill Forth's question. So we'll kind of bundle these together. He said, how does looping inform your compositions? And then I wanted to know, are there any generative or algorithmic pieces on this in this collection?
Yeah, I mean, all the pieces are algorithmic or generated. And I really can't or don't want to go into detail how that's been done, because it's a process that took me over 30 years to figure out. So it's really hard to put into words, because it's not just the technique in itself; it's the way how I use the technique.
Right.
And yeah, so all the pieces are generative, and yeah, looping is a good question. I mean, I've been doing audio looping, which means I can sample something that I play and then work with that, and I've come up with like feedback algorithms or whatever, or feedback networks to treat audio. And I do the same thing on what I call the data level. So I can do the same thing with the MIDI file. So you can imagine that just like a complex synthesizer, that where you can have like lots of different modulation sources, modulating the pitch, the rhythm, etc., etc.
Right.
And that's and that's not again, that's not something new.
Right,
but I think the way that I use this is kind of particular, and for some reason it does really the materials I'm using here, they are but just by themselves, without me actually working on them, it's already musical, you know, and that's what makes it also, in a way, makes it easy um, to compose like this.
Super
But
cool.
I shouldn't say that too loud, though.
Bill also wants to know what other composers influence you. Were the Bartok string quartets part of your research, Ligeti, or anyone else?
Yeah, all those pieces, and I mean, I started listening to contemporary classical or classical music when I was 10 years old. So the research part wasn't just a phase in the closer past. It was really like my whole life.
Right.
And I don't think that classical. I don't make the distinction between classical music, pop music, rock music. For me, it's all just music. And
Hmm.
like from like one early memory listening to I don't know, Hotel California, and being drawn in by by the circular chord sequence, for example, and stuff like that. So those were always kind of the interesting sounds that that inspired me. Yeah, and Bartok, and but in a way, like Bartok is great, but then it's become such a genre by itself, from my perspective, like because it was so influential that I wasn't particularly interested in listening to it much anymore in recent years, because I also didn't want to be influenced too much
Right.
by that. Yeah.
Um, yeah, actually, Andrew Lloyd Webber, I remember hearing a quote where he said, I don't listen to anyone else's music. I only listen to my own music. And I thought, that is such an arrogant, pretentious thing to say. And now that I'm more mature, I think I understand a bit more where he's coming from. And it's not arrogant and pretentious. I mean, he may be, I don't know, but um, I think it's not arrogant and pretentious to live in the world that you create, and to love that. And if you feel there's plenty to draw, there's a wellspring of inspiration, fantastic, great, go for it. Make the world better with your art.
And there are only 24 hours in the day, I
That's
think, or
right.
25 maybe, I'm not sure.
Yeah,
But
depends on how you divide time. I have a friend who lives by 45-minute hours.
uh, yeah, but there you go. I think really I have never considered myself to be obsessive, but I guess in some way I am, because I do um, I do make, I do make decisions in favor of making music, if that makes any sense.
Of course it does. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
and that also means that sometimes it's just required to kind of focus and zoom in on one thing, and in that period of time, it just doesn't make sense to listen to anything else. But having said that, I do listen to a lot of music, um, because in just my everyday life, when I'm doing admin or when I'm surfing the internet, I try to to know what's out there. It's
Right.
just that most of the time I'm really bored, because the things that are really great are hardly coming to the surface these days.
Hmm.
And so maybe I'm not spending enough time searching, but well, you know what I mean.
Yeah, I do. We
Yeah.
have another question that came in from Tampsev. I don't know who that is, but Marcus, how, in your perception, this music is different from the music that you create with projects such as Central Zone, Stickmen, and World Music Endeavors? He says
Yeah.
it's kind of stupid question, but it's not.
No, it's not stupid.
I
Well, first
agree.
of all, I can't, like when I'm not playing, I can't rely on my own musicality in the sense of the performance. So with the pieces for string quartet, I took a completely different and new approach. Like I don't think that there's any Markus Reuter cliche in terms of the harmonies in Heartland. Like if I pick up my guitar and I play things, they kind of, there's kind of like a grid that is me.
Hmm.
Okay. But with these compositions, I try to break out of that, like the piece Boon that we just listened to. I couldn't tell you what's happening harmonically. I mean, I could sit down and analyze it, but it's just so wonderful to me to hear something that does not sound like me, in the sense of how I stack overtones.
Yeah.
This piece is like something completely different, and I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very interesting to talk to you, considering the last person I talked to was Devin Townsend, who in his interview said, I don't understand any of it. It's all a surprise to me. It's all, something that's beyond what I can understand or do, but it happens anyway. So very interesting to hear some different takes on the creative process here.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, so we probably have time for one more piece. So let's get into the tragic universe. Let me pull up.
Yeah, that's the one that people haven't heard yet, I think.
Yes. All right. Here it is. Whoops, that's the magic universe, not the tragic. Another great piece. I mean, every piece on here is beautiful and wonderful its own way. James has a very interesting question. Thanks for joining, James. Good to see you. When you composed this, were you putting the notes on the page, then listening to them, e.g. from a MIDI synth, or did you hear it first and then put the notes down?
There's always like the element of listening before committing, really, which, like, because I'm working in several stages. So first of all, creating musical material to work with. So I'm listening to that material, and that material is in a MIDI sequencer. Yes. So I can just, and like for this project, I try to not use string sound. So I used like a very simple sine wavy bell sound and just listen to the just to the pitches without rhythms sometimes, just to get a sense. Okay, what kind of feeling do I get? Do I hear something that inspires me? And then I have several stages in which I put things on paper, basically, just as metaphorically, okay? And I always listen back. And yeah, in this case, once stuff was in the scoring software, then I started listening from the perspective of the players and also from the perspective of the listeners. And I had to take into account the players very much. That was important. I didn't really want to get distracted by what I was thinking about the listener. But like the Tragic Universe, for example, is one of the pieces that was the hardest for me to accept as for what it is somehow. So I could say, like, in a way, I was thinking it was the worst piece of the lot. I don't think that anymore at all. But up until it was actually performed, I kind of had a really different perspective on it. And yeah, the listening part is really what makes the whole difference. And without listening, there's no music, there's no musician, there's no listener without listening.
That's absolutely correct. The tree falling in the woods, right? All right, so tell us more about the quartet. I mean, it's been great to hear your perspective on the music, but
Yeah.
tell us what the quartet has said in response to the music, and share with us maybe the experience you had the first time you heard them playing.
Yeah, I mean, I checked them out on YouTube, and I was very impressed, I have to say. It was just that Dirk, the producer, recording engineer, label owner, he had suggested them because he had worked with them before, and he had like the feeling that they're perfect, and he was absolutely right. That when I first met them, and when they have a female first violin player, and she was just as great as they all were, but she was particularly great. Like, a group of people where there were only men and there was one woman, and it could have been kind of awkward, but it was amazing and perfect. And first of all, just to have that female energy in the equation, let's say, which I think is wonderful. But just the workflow was so fantastic. And Dirk, when he was engineering, he had the scores in front of him, he had the talkback, and he was communicating with them he was talking Dutch, actually. He speaks Dutch as well. And so I didn't really even understand most of what they were talking about. But it was great because he only occasionally he turned around to me and said, "Markus, what do you think about this and that?" But he basically, made the decisions, and he completely led the whole recording session. And it was just the most amazing way I've ever seen, and the most professional way I've ever seen musicians work, I have to say. And then when I realized that, I was really very happy, and I was able to relax. And I know that there were quite extensive interviews filmed with everyone in the quartet and in the whole team, but I haven't heard those. So I'm not exactly sure what they said, except for these few snippets that were used in the promotional videos. I don't know. I just from observing them, I think like what happened is like kind of the usual that I see happening with my music, that people at first are skeptical, and but from looking at the music, they don't really get a sense of what it's about, and they start playing it, and then there's a certain buzz and excitement, and they were unbelievable. They were fantastic. Like Dirk said, okay, that was the last take. You can go home. And they said, no, we want to play it again. Unbelievable. Like
That's great.
really, really great musicians that really got into it, understood it, like felt, really made the music their own. And yeah, I was very lucky.
Now, I had the what I would call the privilege of hearing a group of musicians play a piece that I composed. Um,
Mhm.
Unfortunately, it was a little too difficult for them to play well enough to perform it in front of an audience. But
Hmm.
to be in a room with people performing a piece that you played where you are not a part of it is, to me, one of the most special experiences I've ever had. And even though we started at just such a slow tempo, to see people really like trying to hone in on your notes, on your
Hmm.
selections, and to do them honor and justice, I felt so undeserving at that time. And
Hmm.
I don't know if you experienced anything like that, but for me personally, like, I still remember that moment, hearing, the first few measures, hearing this ensemble. I think it was 16 guitarists playing a
Yeah.
piece, and I thought, this is the most incredible thing. Like, now I completely get why a composer writes music for an ensemble. And it's not an ego thing. It's like, this is the most magical manifestation of an idea that I had through
Yeah.
other people.
I mean, I'm totally with you. And I remember when we had the premiere of Todd Morton 513 in Colorado, that was unbelievable. Like 55 people playing this piece, and yeah, it was incredibly moving. And I somehow I started to realize that me coming from a working class background, that I'm still struggling with even seeing myself as being able to deliver anything of value in a different world other than the working class that
Hmm.
I'm coming from. And I still, that's why it's kind of like also so awkward when people call me a genius or something. Because if you know what I mean, it's
Yeah.
like totally contrary to how I experience myself, or
Right.
like, and like whenever I actually dare to say that I know what I'm doing, okay, or I know that I know what I'm doing, but somehow this like the way that people interact, and like jealousy and envy and whatever, like these strong emotions that are just happening between people, it can get so clouded, like the you don't really know anymore what's going on. And that's why this whole process recording Heartland was so wonderful, because there was nobody was asking or even like sending subtext, like it was all just so natural and normal. And I didn't have to fight in order to get accepted as the person who wrote this music. And I think I'm on the same level as the people who play the music. Like for me, there's no difference at all. But I know that within these scenes, whether it's like prog rock or, like even in pop music, you got these scenes where, you're just not allowed to come in, get into those scenes. And yeah, that's why I'm really curious what will happen, and I'm actually very, very anxious about what will happen with Heartland. I think it's just I wish that people outside of the circles of the people that I love and that love me already, I want other people to hear it but really the question is like, okay, why do I want them to hear it? And is it really important? I mean, it would be nice to sell some copies because I haven't made any money on this. This is also like something like, yeah, there was crowdfunding and we raised like I don't like $14,000 or something, but I didn't get anything. Yeah, some people are not aware of that mostly. So that's why I mean I want to sell it. Yeah, it would be great if people would enjoy it and buy it. And yeah,
All right, so I think that's a great note to end on. Not you not getting paid.
yeah,
That's not a great note.
yeah,
But let's get you paid. So if you do not own this record, please go to the store. There's vinyl, there's CDs, there's everything, digital, and there's so much value per dollar. So whatever you can give, just Bandcamp lets you pay whatever you want. So
yeah.
just send some money Marcus's way. Come on, just do it, people.
Dude, dude. Yeah.
All right, man.
But the official release date is April 12th.
Oh, it's
So
not
it's
even
not,
out yet.
no,
I
it's
didn't
not even
realize that.
yet. So, but people can pre-order. Yeah.
Okay, excellent. All right, thank you. Marcus, I really appreciate you taking the time. This was really a lot of fun, so let's definitely do it again during your next release.
Thank you, my friend.
All right, cool. Thanks,
Yeah.
everyone. Thank you for
Yeah.
joining the
Yep.
stream.
Yeah.
Okay, bye.